Hi, guys, and welcome to the Quinn podcast. Here we give you a look through the eyes of the most successful athletes, entertainers, entrepreneurs, and influencers on this planet. Be sure to check out all of the content at quinnpodcast.com. Enjoy the episode. Yeah, we're rolling. Good, perfect. Disclaimer before we go into AI, I don't know shit about it. I know enough to sound smart to my parents. That's about it.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
sure.
It's perfect. That's my
Yeah, right.
audience.
When did
Um,
you learn about it?
I started AI back in 2016. I was at Stanford, and my first exposure to AI was in the summer of 2013.
Mhm.
I was working with a Columbia Business School professor on social and economic networks and working on modeling social situations, making predictions mathematically. And so that actually was AI. I didn't know back then. I just thought it was really cool, applying numbers to social situations, and I loved math. So I went to work with him on math. And then when I went to Stanford, I decided to try computer science and loved it, loved the algorithms class. That was the second course. And it was very challenging at first. So if you are starting computer science, don't expect it to click right away. It definitely took me some time. But then loved it. And when I had to choose a track, I realized that I loved the AI track. It was, along the lines of the math that I loved in high school. It was basically exactly that math, just more advanced. And the same kind of concepts that I thought were fascinating, applying numbers to social situations, and decided to do that track. So, yeah, as I said, in the computer science track, there are multiple, in the computer science major at Stanford, there are multiple different specializations that you can do. And like HCI, human computer interaction, is like making really beautiful designs of interactions, like, UI, user interface design, things like that. Systems, which is more the low level engineering, how data moves on a computer, like pieces. And then I chose the AI track. So I did a lot of work in that starting in 2016, beginning of
Awesome.
2016.
Was there a pivotal moment that made you like fall in love with AI specifically out of everything you were learning back then?
I think it was actually the moment in high school. Uh, so uh, if you ask, I'll tell you the story. So
Sure.
when I was in high school, I I used to act. I grew up acting ever since I was a little kid. I
I saw
have
that.
loved acting. Oh, really? You saw that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that was just a really big part of my life. And I, by senior year, I had an agent. My parents never let me get an actual agent. I used to go to acting school, and they would come through and be like, try to recruit the kids. But my parents were always very against being a child actor, which I'm grateful for in retrospect. And but by senior year, when I was 17, I was like, I'm doing this, just a few months. Like, I just want to try being an actor. Maybe I'll continue. I'll go to, LA or whatever for college. And so I was auditioning, and my favorite audition I ever did was for a play. And it was actually mostly I did film and TV auditions, but this was for a play. It was unusual, but it was a small play. It was like 5 characters, and 2 of which were um, Sarah Jessica Parker and Blythe Danner, who are both very known actors. And I was to play the niece of Sarah Jessica Parker and the granddaughter of Blythe Danner. And I got really far in this audition process. I mean, I loved the script. It was my favorite script ever. And the director and I were like, the director was like, I can't believe you've never been in anything. And we just, loved each other. And it felt like I was perfect for the role. And at the same time, as I said, I was interning with this Columbia Business School professor, learning about how you can apply numbers to social situations. And what we were doing with him was I was modeling how Amazon reviews converge over time. So when a book comes out, people rate it, and then we were seeing how over time actually those like 5 out of 5 star reviews tend to converge. So I'm doing these two things simultaneously, and I end up not getting the role, and it goes to the other woman they were considering, and I realized she was like 5'1", and I realized I was 5'8" at the time. I'm 5'9" now, and I grew an inch in college, but I was five
Nice.
eight eight at the time, and I think all the sleep. I was finally sleeping in college, believe it or not. But I I realized that Sarah Jessica Parker and Blythe Danner are like 5'3", 5'2", like between 5'2" and 5'4". And I could not have played their niece. I would have towered over them. It would have looked silly. It just like wasn't going to work. And so I just remember thinking, you know, as no matter how close the director and I were and how excited we were about it, and, you know, it felt perfect, it wasn't going to work. It was wishful thinking. And so I remember thinking like, well, you know, I learned this technique with this Columbia Business School professor. Maybe I could make a predictive algorithm for, you know, taking IMDb data and predicting how likely I am to get a project or whether I should even audition for the project. Because if I can't, you know, and so at that time I didn't have the word for it, AI, that wasn't in my vocabulary. But that's when I kind of fell in love with it and was like, this is amazing. Because I always loved numbers. I've always loved math too. Like math and acting have always been my thing. I've loved math. And so that was just the coolest thing, to realize I could apply math to people, because I love people. You know, acting is all about the art of empathy, at least the way that I was trained. It's all about people and understanding people and empathizing with them. And so it was very cool. It was an exciting moment for me.
Yeah, I can imagine for sure. Can you take me through that? What it's like when you have this dream for so long, right? And then deciding there's better use of your time. What's that process like? Like on an emotional
acting?
level? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it kind of happened naturally. I had I had a manager in LA by the time I went to college. And again, I had only been auditioning professionally for a few months. But I went to college. I kept telling myself I would go to LA from Stanford, and I obviously did not. I don't think I ever went once to LA from Stanford. And people don't realize, if they don't live in California, how far they are. It's like a 6-hour drive, or, you know, an hour plane ride, which is 3 hours because of driving to the airport and waiting and all these things. But so I was in a play my freshman fall, and it was a 20-minute play, and we had to rehearse every Saturday for 7 hours. And I just realized this wasn't going to work, because I was doing computer science, as I said, at that time. And even freshman fall, it was just, I was doing computer science and, you know, math and all these things, and it was just too much. So I realized I could not keep acting. And that was like, you know, I kept thinking, you know, maybe I'll come back to it someday. I'm going to get my degree, and if I really still want to act, then I can do that. And I miss it sometimes, but at the same time, I'm also really glad that I'm not there. And I think with AI, what's really cool, actually, is that if I ever want to make a script, it's going to be so much easier for me to have the whole process end to end. When you're acting, you know, you're showing up, you're doing someone else's piece of work, you are acting how they want, you have not much creative say over, you know, the roles that you play, especially if you're brand new to the scene. You have not much say over the roles that you have or how you act or anything really. Whereas now with AI, people are able to create these projects end to end. So if I ever decide that, hey, there's a role I really want to play, I probably could do that now, which is amazing. And I've learned that I'm using the skills of empathy and performance and, you know, being in front of a camera, communication, those things, like having something you want to say and then portraying it in a way that's relatable to the audience. All those skills have carried over to what I'm doing now. So I feel very fulfilled, and I'm very grateful that I'm not acting right now.
But it's still in the back of your mind. That's something.
Not much anymore, I will say. Actually,
Okay.
as I'm getting more into, you know, as we were saying before this interview, I just started Harper Carroll AI a year ago, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my work. And so I don't really think of that much anymore right now.
I hear you for sure.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what Stanford's been like? I can imagine if you get admitted to that, that's something.
Stanford was amazing. Oh my gosh. Best place ever. I loved Stanford. I mean, obviously, like most superficially, the campus is beautiful. It's warm and sunny. I remember I grew up in New York City, and my first birthday on Stanford campus, I'm an October baby, October 17th. And I'm used to it being cold and gray on my birthday, and, you know, having Halloween decorations, which I actually ended up missing. But I was biking around campus with the palm trees. It was 80 degrees, sunny. I was like, today's my birthday? It doesn't feel like it. It feels like I'm on some tropical island. But yeah, so I loved, it's beautiful. The people are brilliant. So down to earth and genuine and creative. There's a real mix of from what I experienced. Obviously, there's a whole array of people, from the purely creative to the kind of purely logical to everything in between. And so I got to know people who, some of my best friends were really amazing creatives who were also extremely brilliant. One of my best friends, Raman Amari, he's now the CEO of an AI fashion company. It's like fast fashion using AI. And he's been doing that for going on 6 years now. And you know, he was early to the AI scene because we did AI together in college. And I just got to know such amazing, brilliant people. I got to be exposed to the most cutting edge research in AI. I mean, the AI program, computer science program in general is one of the best in the world. Like, I think there's not much comparison globally to the AI program at Stanford. I guess Waterloo is also really excellent in Canada. But yeah, I mean, I was so lucky. It was just amazing. Loved the people. Just all around, it was such a wonderful experience. So
I hear
think of
you.
it very
That's cool.
fondly. Yeah.
No, I love that. Okay, and then Meta, right? That's a step.
Yeah.
Take me through it.
So I interned at Meta. It was always my dream company. It was Facebook at the time. And going into my senior year, I got an internship there for the following summer. I was getting my master's program, so I could get another internship, and getting my master's degree, after my senior year. So I got an internship after my senior year, and it was for machine learning. So we can talk about that, but machine learning is a subset of AI. It's basically equivalent to AI these days, but it's kind of like the way machines learn, coding that. And so I was working on newsfeed ranking. So the ranking algorithms for newsfeed, which at that time, that was like the cutting edge AI, was the ranking algorithms. And I was on the team, and it was great and very challenging. And I got a return offer, and then came back full time, and then was also getting my master's at Stanford at the same time. So I would take one course a quarter at Stanford while working full time at Meta. So it was kind of like nighttime I would study. And that was amazing because typically the master's co-term, which is when you get an undergrad and then you extend it by a year to get a master's degree at Stanford. It's a special Stanford thing. Typically that's 1 year, but because I took one class a quarter, it ended up being 3 years. So I got to basically take the most cutting edge AI classes every quarter for 3 years. So I was doing AI then in school at Stanford for like 7 years, 6 or 7 years, taking the most cutting edge classes and implementing models. And it was amazing. It was just a perfect mix of both. So highly recommend. It's a lot of work to do both. I was definitely tired, but definitely recommend it. And at Meta, when I came back full time, I was working on integrity intelligence. So working on the integrity systems, preventing terrorism, cyber terrorism on the site. There was really amazing work by some really talented people. Heavy work. So after 2 years, I built some systems that were implemented fully, and then there were teams spun out of it, and that was really rewarding that I was able to do that and have such an impact. But then ended up leaving after about 2 years, after I felt like, okay, I've built my system, it's working, people are using it. I'm now gonna kind of bow out because, again, as I said, it's really heavy, some of the stuff that you're working with there. So at least for me, some people can handle it. It's not like that heavy, but for me it was. And so I switched to a team on augmented reality, building an emotional well-being suite of products for augmented reality.
Yeah, sure. We'll touch on that. That's interesting though, because the complexity at Meta, right? Can you take me through that? I don't think a lot of people understand that. Okay, you're working on a team on something that's like so small, but to them it's big, but it's this huge company, right?
Yeah, totally. Although the team that I was on, I would say it felt less like a tiny, like, there were some teams where you're building like a tiny feature on, Messenger or something. Whereas the
Mm-hmm.
team I was on, it was more of a research team preventing like serious harms on the site. And so, the changes we made affected like any kind of, it didn't feel like a small, tiny piece. It actually felt really significant and important. Like we were involved, we were looking at like, protecting harms in, you know, global elections and things like that were significant.
Yeah, no, I believe you for
But
sure.
yeah.
Last week, I believe, or 2 weeks back, Mark Zuckerberg came out with this echo chamber combat thing, right? With like something that about the newsfeed ranking that you work specifically on.
You mean talking about third-party fact checkers?
I believe so.
So they removed, which I think is great. So they removed third-party fact checkers. So there used to be a system. So specifically, what I was working on was detecting actor-based misinformation. So Zuck talks about this in his podcast with Rogan, and he talks about how he has a team of AI researchers and other types of researchers that are detecting coordinated inauthentic behavior. So countries like China, Russia, etc., they spin up fake accounts, they coordinate misinformation, and then they promote it to kind of stir instability in certain countries. Particularly, for example, the United States is one of them. And they have these AI researchers who are then able to kind of do this misinformation detection or coordinated inauthentic behavior, like spam accounts detection, and then remove that behavior off of the site. And so that involves like these machine learning algorithms that detect the kind of coordinated behavior that's happening here. And so I was working on that. That was it basically described the team I was on. And those came out of the need to detect inauthentic behavior, detect the behavior rather than the content. So it used to be one of the issues that actually instigated the team that I was on was that they used to detect misinformation via something called a third-party fact checker. So they would have these external third-party fact checkers who would basically, you would have this queue for the third-party fact checkers to check one piece of content after another, and you would basically have to say like, this queue is going to be infinitely long, right? And so you have to have some kind of threshold on what kind of content even makes it onto the queue. And so at that time, it was just views, right? Because of like detecting the impact of the harm. It's like how many people are seeing this piece of potential misinformation, but we don't know until it's checked by this third-party fact checker. So you would have these higher queues of viewer thresholds, or these higher viewer thresholds in order to get onto the queue. And so that was just inherently a poor way of doing it, right? And then the third-party fact checkers could have issues as well. And again, it's third party, so it's not Meta. It's like kind of outsourcing. It's their decision. It's not Meta's decision, which I understand completely why Mark did that. But then I guess he realized that, but before I go there, I'll say, but since that was kind of inherently a flawed system, we started working on detecting the inauthentic behavior instead. So finding this kind of coordinated behavior instead of just looking at the content, like detecting misinformation through that, we detect it through, is this cluster of people acting really weird? Is it detected as inauthentic? If so, like, let's look at the content that they're creating, and is that misinformation then? So that's what we were working on. But then I guess Mark, as he is adapted to seeing what else is out there, he's a really smart guy. I'm a big fan of Mark. I think he's a really brilliant, cool person. I don't know him personally, but I have heard good things about him, and just always the sense I got from him from Q&As back in the day when they were in person. I don't know if they still are. It was just, he seems like a normal, cool, smart guy. But anyway, before I go there, he learned that the X model of community notes is better for, fact checking, whereas like source it from the people. And if people on both sides of the political spectrum tend to agree on something, then that's a high signal that it truly is true, whatever they're saying, right? So he then implemented that model across the platform instead.
I like that. What surprised you most about like building something like that at scale? Because there are 3 billion users or something, right? I can imagine that's exciting though, like building something that's used by so many people.
Yeah, definitely exciting, definitely high impact. I definitely felt like my work had meaning, which is really important to me and important to everyone, frankly, from what I hear, people finding meaning in their lives. So it felt really motivating to have that kind of importance on the work that I was doing and to then be motivated every day. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, amazing. That's cool. Can you decide or take me through the decision to then work at a startup? Because you said it was heavy work, that's for sure. Take me through that. I can imagine so many factors at play, right?
Yeah, so when I was working on the augmented reality team, I started kind of thinking about I had a friend of mine who was doing an emotional well-being startup, teaching teens emotional well-being skills at a very low cost. So for like $20 a session, these teens could meet in a group and learn emotional well-being skills. And I thought that was a really wonderful project. And so I thought about joining her as technical co-founder and implementing AI on every level of the stack. And I was thinking about that, and I started, kind of working after hours and being invited to, not like just kind of really brainstorming, thinking about what that would look like. And I got invited to this startup workspace and in San Francisco. I was living in San Francisco at the time. And the first day at this workspace, I met these 2 guys. I think actually I only met one of them the first day. I don't remember. But anyway, I instantly clicked with them. And every time I would go work in the space, I would work with them. And then about a few months in, the emotional well-being startup just didn't work out. The founder was having a baby and her priorities shifted. And so I was at the house of one of these 2 guys. I guess they both lived there, actually. And it's like, oh, well, I guess I'll just, I'll just stay at Meta. And he was like, wait, but why don't you join us? So I realized, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And so and I remember thinking, this is a great idea. Like when I saw them, I was like, I wonder if they'd let me invest, but I don't want to say that. I want to be weird, which I've since learned, like, that's a huge compliment. You don't definitely tell people. But at the time I thought, I don't know, I was new to the whole startup scene. So I don't know if that would be weird to ask, but it was basically a GPU environments startup where they helped make it really easy for people to access the machines that are needed to train AI models. And I thought it was brilliant. I thought the 2 guys were brilliant, really liked them. And so I decided to join them. And it was me, I was a founding engineer. It was me and another founding engineer and then the 2 founders. And the other founding engineer left after a couple months of me joining. So then it ended up being the 3 of us, me and the 2 founders. And it was so fun. I was working every day, all day, every day, including weekends. I would stay until like midnight 30 and then go home, wake up, go to the gym with them, go home. We worked out of their house. So I lived a block away. So I'd wake up and basically I just spent all my time there. I lived in a community house and my house was like, where did you go? We never see you anymore. Because I was just so deep in this startup. It was so fun. And then in that time, I started the AI education. So that's how my AI education thing came about. People needed to get onto the site we needed like users. And so we were like, okay, well, how do we get people on? Well, I guess training a model is really the major use case for why you would want to check out a GPU. So actually like log in and have your own machine. Like the best use case for that would be training a model, fine tuning a model. And so I made a guide on how to do that because that's a bit technically complicated. It involves code and like literally checking out a model and retraining it, like changing the parameters of the model. So I made this guide, and I only had 50 followers on X when I released my first guide. It was from Mistral 7B. Do you know about Mistral?
No. Well, I think I've heard of
It's
it. But I don't know what it is.
It's an open source. It's a company that makes open source models. Now it's kind of shifted towards. They have some. I think they have some closed source and different licensing where you can't. It's not like fully permissive to use the model however you want it. They have a bunch of different models now, but I think one of their first models, Mistral 7B, 7 billion parameter model, which is relatively lightweight. It performed excellently well, basically up to par with the top models at the time that were closed source. And so I made a guide on how to fine tune that open source model. And one of the benefits, and we can talk about this if you're curious, open source, but I made a guide on how to do that. And it got 50,000 views, even though I only had 50 followers on X. And so there was a clear demand for the content, and I continued releasing content, and I was getting, hundreds of thousands of views, and people were really interested and appreciative. And for some reason, the content really struck a chord with people. So yeah, that was the start of my journey. And then that startup was acquired by NVIDIA, and now I'm just doing the AI thing full time. AI education.
No, I'd love to touch on the NVIDIA thing in a bit. Open source and all that. Explain it to me.
So open source.
There we go.
Here we go. So open source versus closed source code. Open source code is code that is available online to be read or edited, and typically you can find it on places like GitHub. So open source models are models where the code is available online. So the architecture of the model, so how it's structured, the different layers, the weights of the model. So the model is made up of an architecture, and then within that architecture there are these layers, and those layers contain numbers, and so the weights of the model are basically the numbers within those layers. You have to train a model to get those numbers. So you have this architecture, and then you train the model in order to find the numbers that are within the layers that you have predefined. So those numbers get tuned when you train the model, hence also fine tuning when you tune the numbers to your specific data. But again, so open source models is the architecture, the data, the weights, parameters, the weights, and then potentially, depending on the type of open source model, the data and the training pipeline. So how, like the actual data they use to train the model, and how they pass that data into the model, and how they trained it, how they like clean the data and all things like that. So potentially how they cleaned it. And so then there's also different types of licenses. So there are very permissive licenses, like the MIT license, where you can basically use the model however you want, just like credit the original model. And there are different other types of licenses that are a bit more restrictive, like, for example, licenses that only allow the models to be used for research, not commercial purposes. So you can't make money off of it. But open source, again, is just the code is available online. And one of the benefits is that you can then run the model locally on your own machine. So getting the right machine is a bit, is a bit of a setup, and they're expensive. But once you have the setup, you can run that model infinitely many times on your machine. So it's basically like having a coffee maker at home versus having to go to the coffee store, going to the cafe every day to get your coffee. I mean, it's like infinitely less expensive. And so these open source models, even if you don't, download them and host them on your own machine, because again, the code is available online, so you could download them, put them on your own machine. Even if you don't do that and you use some kind of other service that does that for you, it's still much less expensive, right? Because they are only paying for the cost of compute and like for hosting the site and things like that. They'll probably upcharge a bit, obviously, to make money, but It's nothing like closed source models where these companies are paying tons of money to create these models. And so then they kind of have this secret recipe that they don't share. And so for you to use the model, you send your input and then they send you the output. So for example, with ChatGPT, you send your prompt and then they send you what the model generates, right? And so, but you don't see the code under the hood. We don't see how the model, we don't see the architecture of the model. We don't see the weights of the model. We don't see the data of the model. We don't see anything. We have no idea how it was made, how it's constructed, what technologies they used, the layers they used, the type of model. We don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And so those tend to be much more expensive as well because it's extremely expensive to train these models. And so these closed source companies, they're spending billions of dollars on training these models. And so then they upcharge a lot to use the closed source model. And they could do that for a long time because the closed source models were just so much better than the open source models because of this kind of cost comparison, right? And among other reasons, I guess, like top researchers and things like this. But yeah, now open source models are continuously coming out that are up to par with the top closed source models, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I hear you. From the way I'm seeing it, there's like culturally like a big push to democratize AI, right? How do you see the balance between like open source and like more corporate AI? Because it's tough in a way.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think open source is crucial. Truly, open source is crucial because AI has so many applications, and the goal, AI can be applied to any problem, basically, like anything. And so, and AI is not just large language models. There are so many other types of AI. It's really an optimizer, problem solver. Mm-hmm. It figures out, given input and the output, what in between causes that output. And so, for example, like there's new research out of USC that is glioblastoma cancer treatment, which is this cutting edge AI developed cancer treatment where they are able to find cancer cells, brain tumor cells. So glioblastoma is the most deadly form of brain cancer. If you get it, you only have a 10% chance of surviving 5 years. There's new research for treatment of this extremely deadly and hard to treat brain tumor cancer, where they're able to transform brain tumor cells into cancer fighting cells. And so like literally transform cancer cells into cancer fighting cells. How did they do this? I believe the way that they did it, and I would have to double check, is that they were probably found certain cells that did that and then were able to then identify, like they didn't know why. They just said like, look, these cells did that, but like why? We don't know. But AI is then able to say like, okay, this cell did transform, this cell didn't transform, this cell did transform. And then it figures out what about that cell, a certain cell would make it transform. And then it's able to then say, given cell, will it transform or not? And like, it's amazing. And so there's so many different ways that you can apply AI to so many different problems. And they're very niche problems. And I think AI, there's a big missed opportunity here right now where AI should be used in every sector. It should be used for all different types of research, cancer research, diagnostic research, like early diagnostic imaging, treatment. This is all just in health, in education. Every single sphere should be using AI. Even, creativity, like photography, there's new technology now where you can click a button and remove, something from the background that you don't want there. Before that would take photographers hours, that would in this tedious work that they could be taking on another job or editing more photos or doing something else, right? So AI should be used in every single sphere. And so having this open source technology allows everyone, it democratizes access to it. And it really is, it's just math, right? And so just allowing everyone to have access to math seems very intuitive to me. And it's not actually the math. It actually isn't that complicated, believe it or not. And so Yeah, I think it should be applied to every single industry. And for certain, if only certain companies own it, then everything would have to go through them. It would completely stymie progress. In addition, the companies that are owning it, that, are closed source and getting a ton of money, for example, OpenAI, their target is AGI, artificial general intelligence. And so, like, they're not even thinking about these smaller specialized models that can help completely transform our world today, transform research for health and cure cancer and all these things. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about making a generalized model, which is unbelievably expensive and challenging to create. It's just like one of the hardest problems of our time is making this thing, AGI. And so it's just a really missed opportunity. And I think open source is so crucial in educating everyone so that they can apply AI to their use cases to help speed up this stride, this movement towards the kind of utopia that I see is coming with AI if we're able to apply these small specialized models.
Yeah, for sure. Before I went to law school, I studied business. The problem from that perspective with closed source is like before, like say 10, 20 years ago, like a big company, all they had was just knowledge and people. That was basically it. But now you're creating these models in a way, and if they're closed source and you have patents on them, these like wealth gaps, they're not, it just is what it is. There's no way to close those.
Right.
I guess that's just capitalism, but it's a tough one. It's like unseen.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Exactly. And it's kind of tragic because AI is going to enable people to really follow their passions and so many more entrepreneurs and individual creators out in the world. And so it just makes me so sad that it would kind of take that democratization of creation away from people.
Yeah, it's funny. This is probably the first like real left-wing argument in my mind. Like I grew up pretty conservative, right? But this is like we should democratize this in a way because this could be the end of it. I mean, the way I see it.
I will say I don't know if it's left wing. I have to say I heard so Mark Andreessen has shared that. Mark Andreessen shared that he's an investor and an incredible early internet founder, brilliant person. He's founder of A16, Andreessen Horowitz, and a really great forward-thinking tech thinker. And he shared that he was at some kind of government meeting and they were saying that they want to close source AI basically and lock down the math. So they were saying back, when was it? Like around nuclear, when there was the Cold War maybe, they made certain types of math confidential. They classified certain types of the math that it went into these like nuclear weapons. And they said that they would be willing to do that again for AI math. And I guess my thought is like, it's not that complicated. Like, I feel like someone could figure it out. But, it was concerning to hear that.
Yeah. What are scenarios you see in that way? How do you see that play out from like a macroeconomic perspective?
If they were to try to classify that math.
Yeah, the whole democratization around it.
Oh, so you're saying the opposite. So if they weren't.
I guess just whatever way this could go. How do you see that from what you know?
Well, my mission with all this is to educate people so that they can apply AI to their use cases and to transform their individual fields and their individual use case. If they're a researcher or if they're, a coffee shop owner and they want to optimize, this, like I have a friend who's an esthetician and she is constantly given people's, symptoms, or I guess that's the word you would use, symptoms. She is able to diagnose certain types of lotions and creams and things like that. So that can be automated. She says, Harper, I waste so much time like doing these intake forms and then analyzing it, and I have so many of them. I feel like I could automate that whole process now. Yes, she can. And she can take on more clients and focus on expanding her business or making new products, or, there's so much more that she could do if she's freed up the time. And she's put in the work now to figure out, to make those diagnoses enough times that the model can now kind of simulate her own diagnosis patterns, right? And how she makes those decisions. So she's done the work. Now the AI can take it from there, and so she can work on other things. And so, yeah, my goal with all of this is for everyone to be able to use it to enhance their lives and to automate the things that they can automate so that they can grow and they can expand and they can just like create a life that they're just super happy with constant growth,
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll hope for that then, for you to succeed with that mission.
Thank you. Thank you.
The
That's
best
the goal.
scenario. Yeah, right. I like that. What does the AI utopia look like for you? What's 50 years down the road? What's best case scenario?
Oh my gosh, 50 years. I have to say, like, no one really knows what's going to happen in 10 years, let alone 50 years, because once AI becomes so widespread and intelligent, there are going to be so many changes that we can't even fathom. So it's going to come up with insights that we never had before. So here's a good way of thinking about it. In history, there have been a few polymaths, and polymaths are people who are experts in more than one domain. There have not been that many, as I said, maybe a couple hundred. Nikola Tesla was one of them. Thomas Edison was another one, I think it's Thomas Edison. But they were able to have these extraordinary advancements in their fields because of their ability to synthesize and draw correlations across two or more different fields because they were experts in them. And so typically the human brain is only an expert in one vertical, but being able to know two, you're able to draw these insights that were like novel and amazing. And that's just two. And so AI is going to be the ultimate polymath. It will be an expert in thousands of fields, which is just, we can't even fathom the technological advancements that we're going to get from that, right? Consider the advancements from just those two polymaths that I mentioned. Think of this across thousands of fields. And so we're going to have completely transformative energy sources, electronics. Will we even need electronics? Like, will everything be, I don't even know like what's going to happen, but I think that there will be, in the more short term and then potentially long term, people will be able to just focus on what they love. I think there will be more people who are able to leave jobs that they're doing just because, it pays the bills and it's kind of soul sucking. I think those people will have more opportunities to start their own thing. I have a friend whose wife, she was a midwife, or a medical birther, like she would assist births in hospitals, and a nurse. And she became a mom and she was working at home just with the kids. And now with AI, she has started a school for their community, and it's a Montessori school, and she's done all of it herself because she suddenly is an entrepreneur. It's unleashed this entrepreneurial spirit in her, this entrepreneur in her, and she's creating this wonderful local school for her community in Austin. And it's going to be, outside, but also teach them AI. And, it's just this beautiful mix of all the things she ever wanted for her kids and for her community. And this is a stay-at-home mom with her kids. And so it's just amazing what we're going to see people be able to do, and the passion projects that they're going to create and the lives that they're going to be able to make for themselves with this with these unbelievable tools at their disposal.
You think it will become sentient at one point?
Depends on what you mean by sentient. It's such an interesting conversation.
Self-aware, I guess.
I guess it's a very hard question. I think agents, so large language models right now are you give an input and then it gives you an output. And so if you ask it like, are you aware of itself? Then I guess it'll probably say yes, right? I'm an AI. And so I guess that knowledge of itself is therefore encoded in its brain, in the parameters of the model already, right? Because if it gives you that output, then that means the neurons contain that knowledge. So, but the brain isn't actively thinking unless you're using it. Unless you send in input, there's no movement through the model. The brain, the neurons aren't activated. The information isn't propagated through. So it's kind of offline if you're not using it. When we have agents, when things are constantly online, so agents are models that are able to kind of move about the world and have side effects on their own. They're not just unlike the large language models where they're only really online to give you a response and then they're done. But as these kind of always online models become more popular, I guess, therefore, the neurons are constantly running, and then there is this constant potential self-awareness going on, right? Because if the brain is aware of itself, but then you wonder, is there a consciousness in that? Perhaps it's technically self-aware, but is there actual consciousness? Is there an actual being, an I am presence in that entity? I don't know. I'm not sure. And I mean, some people think dogs aren't self-aware or aren't conscious. I do. I think that they have consciousnesses, but I don't know. I can't tell you.
Fascinating. Very interesting.
What do you think? What
do I think about AI having consciousness? Well, if I knew, I'd tell you, but I don't.
I know. I get it.
It's fun. It's just interesting. It's just, like I said, I'm looking at it from just a business perspective, right? And there's so much opportunity, but it's so scary at the same time. A lot of people, there are power laws and everything. It's just like the dot-com bubble. It will slow down in a way that it's more manageable. That's just life, and I believe in those power laws. But at the same time, this is not something that will fix itself.
I don't think this.
I'm more scared of it than that I am excited about it. But I'm intrigued by it. That's for sure. It's just like I said. There's just an irreversible gap if it in 5 years from my perspective. If it's closed source, you can the gap is just there and there's no way to bridge it. That's how I see it.
That's a really great point. That's a really great point, and we should be talking about it more.
I believe so. Yeah, that's for sure. You're coming out with the podcast, right?
Yes, I am.
Tell me about it.
So the plan is to have it come out within the next couple months, and I will be doing solo episodes talking about the technicalities of AI if that's interesting to people. I do have a 10 Days of AI Basics series out on Instagram, so 90-second videos, 10 specific lessons that'll kind of get you completely covered on the basics of AI and how it works end to end, from just setting up a model to training it, deploying it, open source, things like that. Then I have a longer form series on YouTube where their videos are 40 minutes or so for each of those 10 days. And then I have this podcast coming out where it will be, as I said, solo episodes talking about topical topics, events, kind of like DeepSeek and explaining that. I had a quick video on that recently that was very helpful apparently to people. So talking about topical events in a clear way, because I know this stuff can be kind of just what's going on? What's happening? So just making that really accessible to everyone, not just the tech people. And interviews with people who are using AI in their fields, for example, healthcare, cutting edge cancer research. What does AI look like for them? As I said, AI is not just large language models. And so I want to help educate everyone about the different types of AI that are available out there, and so that they have a better understanding of what is AI, how does it work, what are the different applications that are being used, and how can I then therefore apply it to my own application, to my own work and everyday life, to what I'm creating in the world. And so again, having these interviews with founders, researchers, creators who are using AI, and through that helping people, as I said, understand AI and also then therefore be able to apply it in their lives. So that's kind of the general idea for the podcast. I'm still open to ideas of what the viewers want, but I'm really excited about it.
I like it. Cool. I look forward to it. That's fun.
Thank you.
What are you most excited for personally right now? What's on the roadmap besides those points you just mentioned?
For myself?
Yeah.
Or just for life?
Just life general, your life. Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just seeing how this has been evolving has been such a enormous privilege and joy. And I feel like I'm kind of just taking it day by day, waking up and doing what I need to do, and just seeing how this is growing and how it's helping people is just so rewarding. So I'm not even just necessarily excited for anything. I'm just enjoying every day building and connecting with people. And I just feel so grateful, like so grateful to be alive. Yesterday, I literally yesterday went on a date with myself and got an ice cream cone and was like walking around Silver Lake. I'm in Los Angeles. I was like looking at the full moon. Like, wow, life is great.
That's
I get to just
amazing.
like take myself on a date like any day. So life, I just feel very happy.
Thanks for listening to the Quinn podcast. If you enjoyed it, you can go to quinnpodcast.com to check out all of the previous episodes. quinnpodcast.com.